watching or listening that don't know what Passive House is, it's not the end all be all. We just mention it because we're sitting in a Passive House. That's how we had first met, is through that Passive House community. Quickly, what is a Passive House or a certified Passive House? I think that term gets thrown around a lot without really understanding that there actually is a certification process if somebody wanted to go through it.
A passive house is a building that doesn't rely, at least in our climate, so in the Ottawa region of Eastern Canada, a passive house is a building, not necessarily a house, I should say. I mean, it could be a commercial building, it could be an institutional building, but a building that doesn't rely as actively on mechanical systems as your typical code minimum home does, especially in this climate.
For heating and cooling.
For heating, cooling, and ventilation, yeah. In our climate, it is important to ventilate continuously in the heating system where our building is sealed to the cold environment outside. And for some portion of the year, we need to either heat, for many people also cool, or at least dehumidify. This particular building that we're in right now, where are we now? The end of March, I haven't had the heating system on in this building since the middle of February. Looking out, into this...
Being in Ottawa.
Yeah, I mean, looking out into the heritage neighborhood around me where there's all kinds of buildings that were built 100 years ago, I'm sure they still have their heating systems on.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the day, that's money that we haven't spent on heating this building that we could easily have poured out into the environment otherwise.
And Veronica will show some shots, but you'll notice how thick the walls are here. And you can't see it in the video right now, but what's that, like 20
feet?
20 feet there. Glass that technically is the weakest part of the envelope, but even with that, it's still performing extremely well.
Yeah, so in a passive house, not to get into unneeded levels of detail, and I'm sure you'll provide links that give those details. In a passive house, we're trying to reduce the demand on mechanical systems, reduce the need for the input of resources, especially resources to run mechanical systems for the purpose of heating or cooling or ventilating. So low energy use achieved by high insulation values and high levels of air tightness, ultimately creating a living place that is much more comfortable or much more consistent than the other products that are available, even brand new, from a builder who's creating a home that might just satisfy the requirements of the building code, as opposed to reaching toward a performance standard, is not only measurable in numbers, but is measurable in experience. The ability to turn off the heating system in February and sit in this room,
which is typically the coldest month,
and not feel like I got to put a toque on and a down coat and a pair of socks.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you built the first passive house in Ottawa, certified, in 2008, which is down the street from where we are sitting right now. Was that one of the first in Canada?
Talking about firsts, I think, is in some ways kind of like trying to get projects on the cover of magazines. Yeah. I mean, there is some value from a business development perspective in saying I was first.
Yeah.
But in actuality, that particular project that might have been the first certified passive house, at least in this area, was one of a handful that were, I think, all advancing the industry at around the same time. In 2008, 2009, 2010, we were, as an industry, beginning to step beyond the leadership in energy and environmental design standard that really preceded market adoption, certainly in the residential design and construction industry. That home that we're talking about received a LEED Platinum certification as well as the passive house certification that it received. At the end of the day, for me, the certification is less important than the actual performance levels. And there's some individuals that have done some really interesting research into whether or not homes we design to achieve a particular standard and build to achieve a particular standard actually perform at that standard.
Right.
And I think that's today's question. I think 5 and 10 years ago, we were refining the methodology. Now we're being given opportunities to check our work by looking at real energy bills, real water consumption bills, and in some cases modify what we thought we knew in the past.
Yeah, and that's always interesting, right? Because there's theory and then there's reality.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever advised any homeowner to go for certification because unfortunately there's no value even in the marketplace. Right now for us, it makes sense. We can test it. We can share it like this, what worked, what didn't work. Where I was going with that question originally though is when you started going down that path, Carmen, your wife, was she like on board? Did she know about that? Or were you like, we're going to do this. What do you think? How do you present? Because I find like when you're working with couples, it's always interesting, right? Because the needs or the wants of one of the couples might be different than the other, right? So we were always playing the middleman to some degree about figuring out, you're trying to figure out the priorities of the project, but then you're trying to prioritize the individuals within that whole circumstance as well.
Don't divorce.
Yeah. We play, luckily my wife Natasha is a family therapist by trade, so go to her for advice sometimes. But it's always interesting, right? So, and Natasha and I, luckily, we were on the same page when it came to that. But I'm curious, was Carmen for it at the beginning? How did that work for you? And then now that she's experienced it, did it change anything? Seeing how this is your second, I would assume that she's obviously on board with it as well. And then what are the reasons that you chose to go for that way? You have a young family too. I know it's a healthier home. There's all sorts of benefits.
I met my wife when I was working on my master's degree in environmental design at the University of Calgary. She was also a student in the same faculty, and so we shared at least some of the fundamental I guess belief structure that informed our decision to design and build something for ourselves that ultimately has received a passive house certification and other similar performance certifications. I think though that it's not about the certification. It's not necessarily about whether we use $10 worth of energy in a month or use $100 worth of energy in a month. For her, it's more about how it feels, and it's that experiential value associated with comfort, not only related to temperature, but just other qualities. I mean, we're sitting right now in a home that is on a relatively busy residential street. I mean, there's a bus stop right there, and with the construction project happening in the park, you can see you can see the dump trucks rolling by. But that
Veronica
noise
probably didn't even realize all the dump trucks going.
Yeah, that noise doesn't come into our living space in the same way that it might otherwise. And it's those kinds
That's
of
one of
things.
those things that you can't explain. Like, you have to experience it.
Yeah.
Right. So like if you live in the city, you know how noisy it
Yeah.
can be with like sirens and everything else. Like a big part of that, which people don't realize, is air tightness.
Yeah.
Right. The sound traveling through air leakage points, whether it's through your windows, doors, or walls.
I think Carmen, her interest in designing and building in a better way, ultimately, was also driven by the fact that it isn't just her and I. I mean, we do have two daughters. In our interest in creating the best possible space for them, not only to live in, but to contribute to the creation of the best possible future for everyone that we surround ourselves with. I mean, I think that too was a pretty major driver. We wanted to create a place that was designed and built with intention, with the intention of best suiting our needs. But hopefully, when we move on from this home, maybe this place altogether, that we leave something that can still work well for those that are going to follow us. In the design work that I do, and this doesn't always factor into what my clients' priorities are necessarily, but I do have in the back of my mind these thoughts about, well, how could this building be used in the future, or how could it be adapted easily so that it could be used by somebody else for something else in the future. I mean, it's often said that the greenest home, or the most energy efficient home out there, is the one that's already been built, not the one that we start building from scratch on a vacant lot. I mean, if we don't have to invest in the embodied energy in brand new materials, if we can reuse existing materials, then that is a greener path.
Stock is always growing.
Oh,
right?
I mean,
So
it's incredible. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the biggest challenge within our industry, not only for us as an industry, but for our province, for our country, it's in the retrofit of those existing buildings. And it is really challenging to take an existing building and have it transformed into a state where it can perform at the same kind of level as a brand new build.